All right, welcome everybody to the Mardi Gras edition of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich. I'm sorry we weren't around last week. Things happen, technical problems happen. It is what it is. So we're back. And my partner, Sean Williams, the musician extraordinaire, is fighting a cold tonight. So please excuse any coughing or anything he does on that end. You gotta love Louisiana in March. I'm washing pollen off my car in 30-degree temperatures. So,
man, I saw a mosquito wearing a sweater snorting a line of pollen off of the hood of a car the other day.
I'll just be glad when it stops raining. For the love of God, it's got to stop raining. We finally had pretty weather yesterday, and today, but I mean, just no more rain for a while. My mud doesn't need any more water.
Yeah, well, I have a concrete walkway going out of my house, and it's been pretty much underwater for about the past 2 weeks. But hey, everybody, I'm glad to be back. It's been a long 2 weeks, and I have missed you guys tremendously.
We missed you too, Sean.
Yeah. Let me pay the bills real quick. We want to thank Fan First Productions for sponsoring us. Invite you guys to subscribe to us on iTunes and on YouTube. And we love you guys. Reach out to us. You can hit us up on Facebook at the Under the Dome podcast page. Wow. I've gotten really streamlined at doing that.
Yes, you have.
I'm sitting here reading my notes and talking, and did I say it right?
I think you did.
Please excuse me, guys. As Alan said, this Louisiana weather is whipping me. And one quick note, Jerry Poor, I know that you're watching because I'm sitting here talking to you on the live chat. I do not ignore your messages, brother. Things have been crazy. 6 different directions at one time. I do appreciate you checking on me and keeping up with me, man. I will respond eventually. Just be patient with me. Alan.
Yes.
I already know the answer to this question, but I think it would be entertaining for you to tell the people. Did you watch the NFL Combine?
I would rather watch paint dry than watch the NFL Combine. That is the most overrated, useless activity in all of the off-season activities. And I'll tell you why. The part that's really important to the teams, we don't even watch. It's the medical checks. That's what the GMs and all want to see. They want to see the medical checks. They want to interview the players. They want to talk about schemes with them to see how they tick. But all this running around in shorts and doing the cone drills and running 40-yard dashes and all that stuff, that's all garbage. It really is. I mean, as a fan watching this, it's just garbage. It's totally useless. Do you remember the name John Ross?
Yes, I do. The fastest man alive.
That was the guy who, blew away everybody at the Combine a few years back. And everybody's like, oh, my God, he's a first-round draft pick now because he could run fast. He ran an unbelievable 40 time. Problem was, people forgot whether or not he could actually catch a football. And lo and behold, he gets drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals, and they're talking about trading and getting rid of him because he can't catch a football consistently. They forget, after you watch all these guys running on shorts and T-shirts, you forget, do they actually know how to play football? And it's unfortunate that just so much emphasis put on 40 times and shuttle drills and cone drills and that kind of stuff. You know, we don't really get to see how good of a football player they really are. They look unbelievable. They got that guy, DJ Metcalf or DK Metcalf, who is the nephew of Terry Metcalf, was a great player with the St. Louis Cardinals, the football St. Louis Cardinals. And what was the other Metcalf? Come on, I just had him a second ago. Ex-Cleveland Brown, ex-Atlanta Falcon.
Eric
Metcalf, thank you. That was the son of Terry Metcalf. Great football lineage. And he looks unbelievable. If this guy was going to be cast in a Marvel or DC movie, he could play the role of just about any character you can think of. Black Lightning in DC, Power Man, Luke Cage in the Marvel side. He would be awesome. Looking at him, can he play football? How good of a receiver is he? He looks great, but that's another player you're going to see, and you're going to go, hey, I don't know. We won't know until someone's going to overdraft him, and we'll find out. I'm already reading, is he as good as Megatron? Is he as good as Julio Jones? And people right now are looking at me going, you're a freaking idiot. Don't you know how good this guy is? You never watched him play at Ole Miss. You never saw these things.
Oh, my God. He played at Ole Miss?
Yeah, he played at Ole Miss.
He can be bought.
He was the number 3 receiver, actually. He was not even the most productive receiver. But, again, you have to take into consideration who was the quarterback at Ole Miss, the offensive scheme. This team was in shambles because of the scandals the previous year. They fired the head coach that recruited him, all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot. I know there's a lot of baggage to go through, but again, you're falling in love with a guy based on what you saw him do in shorts and T-shirts, not catching contested balls. Does he go out and attack the football? I mean, you can see that on YouTube highlights with god-awful rap music playing to it. But I'm just saying, if you really watch him and practice with him and interview him and see what kind of route tree does he know? How does he handle press coverage? How does he find ways to get open? That's the stuff that we really don't see in these combine drills. We have to go back and really look at a lot of film. So that's why I think it's a waste of time. It really is. I don't even watch it. I really don't.
The only reason that I watched it is because it was on at the restaurant while I was at work.
But
and to be honest, they're working out offensive linemen, and one would run a drill, and while the next one was getting ready, they'd talk about why Kyler Murray is the quarterback of the future.
Yeah, well, I will say this, though. It did help. The combine did help the draft stock of Teron Armstead, because he ran an unbelievable 40 dash, and he looked very not angelic. He had great agility. I was trying not to say angelic, but he had great agility. And, for a guy, but seriously, for a guy who played Arkansas Pine Bluff, who doesn't get a lot of exposure, who does, there isn't a lot of high quality film on him, a combine performance helps. But
yeah,
for these guys, if you play in Alabama, for example, you play at Clemson, Notre Dame, you get a ton of exposure because of ESPN and NBC, and the college football networks follow these players, so you can see a lot of game footage, you can see a lot of stuff on there. But when it comes to a lot of the guys that seem to have drafted, and Armstead and Onyemata, there isn't much out there for them. Akeem Hicks, another guy who went to Canada. There isn't a lot out there, and you don't see those guys at combines generally. So
yeah.
It's just that's why I kind of just shoved that stuff aside, and I can appreciate it if I was working for a team, the usefulness of it. Again, the medical stuff, the interviews with the players. You can get some of that in your pro days too, but where else can you get a whole bunch of them at one time? You can target people just to talk to them and see what kind of player, what is their mental game like? You know,
Yeah.
how are they looking at the future? You know,
I have a hard time, like as you said, I have a hard time buying into the validity of it for the exact same reasons as what you said. It's overblown. It's all about being on TV and getting exposure, and I get that. I understand that concept. But you're putting way too much stock in something that really is irrelevant when it comes to football, because when it comes right down to it, the most important intangible for a player coming out of college going into the pros is something that you can't measure, you can't gauge, and you really have no idea until they get there. And that's their willingness to do what they don't want to do when they don't want to do it, to give them the opportunity to do what they want to do when they want to do it.
Okay. No, I got you. I understand what you're saying. No, I mean
it's all their desire, because you know these guys come out of college, they've been playing for probably 15 to 16 years continuously, religiously, and there's a if they fully invested in the college experience, chances are that they now have something that they can do besides play football. And for a lot of them, the desire is not there to continue their playing career. But I mean, you got people that are standing there with millions of dollars saying, please come be a part of what we're doing. And it's hard to say no to that when you're a 21, 22, 23-year-old kid.
Well, I always go back to, when it comes to that stuff, I always go back to, the famous interview with Peyton Manning and Ryan Leaf. And the question they asked Peyton Manning, what would you do when you get drafted? You're the number one overall pick. And they asked Ryan Leaf the same question. Ryan Leaf said, "You gonna die on me?"
No, I'm gonna try real hard not to.
Okay. Ryan Leaf said, I got to be honest with you, I'm gonna go to Vegas with my buddies. Whereas Peyton Manning said, hey, I'm gonna want to get a hold of the playbook. I want to get to know the roster, all my teammates, what their names are, what their spouses' names are, where they're from, where they went to college, how many Pro Bowls they've been to. Get to know my teammates. So when I show up, I'm just one of the guys, and I care about these people. I'm a leader, and Ryan Leaf talking about going to Vegas showed the kind of character he was. So that, obviously people learn from those mistakes. A lot of these guys get very scripted answers now. They have agents and they have specialists who train these guys how to answer these kind of questions. But that is still useful because you can't fake sincerity. So you may know an answer by rote from meeting with an agent, but it's going to come across as insincere. So it's a good way to pick out things. And I think about a guy like Randy Gregory, who flunked a drug test before he hit the combine. It's like, dude, this is a job interview, and you're going to flunk the drug test before the job interview,
or even like Reuben Foster, who got sent home from the combine.
Yep.
For being a psycho.
Yep. And,
and everybody tried to play it off in the media. Well, it was just a situation that got taken way out of context.
No, it reveals character flaws. Yeah, reveals character flaws.
Fast forward a year later, and where is he? And
That's why I said the combine itself, what we see, is useless. As a fan, it's useless. All you can do is just fall in love with guys running around in shorts and t-shirts because they look good. But
I'd watch Baywatch for that.
Yeah, true. But I'm just
and probably get a lot more out of it. actually, but
Right. So
go
I was
ahead.
just going to say for the stuff that we don't see is the useful stuff for the teams. All the stuff we're talking about, the interviews, the medical checks. That's what's useful for the team. So anyway, that's my take on that.
Um, let me ask you this then, as we
Okay.
transition into the next topic. It seems all systems forward in about what is it, like a month till the draft?
Mhm.
Um, all like 3 picks that we have. Um,
We have a lot of day
at,
3 picks. We do have a lot of day 3 picks. So
yeah. Okay. As we move move in that direction,
uh-huh.
if you had to make a top 5 list of the positions of need as we approach the draft,
Yeah.
and as I ask this, for those listening, I will say this: this list could be altered at any point in time uh, via free agency, because obviously, if you have a position of need and you sign a free agent for that position, that changes things drastically. But
Mm-hmm.
what would you consider to be the top position of need for the Saints headed toward the draft?
Well, if you don't re-sign Mark Ingram, if you lose him to another team, running back becomes a big issue because we've already seen what it's like those first 4 games without Mark Ingram, and the problems we had. Granted, we went 3-1 in those games, but as we talked about during the season, Kamara getting as many touches as he got, there was a point during the season, especially as it got towards the end of the season, that it seemed that Kamara kind of wore down compared to last year because he was seeing the ball so much more. It's not a knock on him being in shape. It's just a toll that a 16-game season has on a player. You really need to have 2 backs. And the Saints rotating Ingram and Kamara the way they do, and Ingram's outstanding pass blocking skills, and he's actually a better screen player than Kamara is. That's a huge hole that you'd have to fill. What if you lose him? And I think you can get Ingram in a much cheaper contract than you can some of the free agent running backs out there. So that's a high priority for me.
I agree with you there. That's not what's number one on my list, though.
Right. Right. Well, you're assuming in your list that you put together, you're assuming we keep Ingram.
Absolutely.
So
I don't think, really and truly, in all honesty, I don't see Ingram wanting to leave New Orleans. Now, there's going to be teams out there that are willing to pay him more money than what he's making in New Orleans, but I honestly believe that Mark Ingram wants to be a Saint. And due to that, the number one position on my list was tight end. Because at this point, you have lost Ben Watson. You've lost Humano Wanui. And all you have is a oft injured Josh Hill. You got to question his durability. And you have Dan Arnold. And unfortunately, the lasting memory of Dan Arnold is going to be that pass in the NFC Championship game. He'll get better, but if this offense does not have the type of production that it needs out of the tight end position, that is a very, very glaring need for me.
I agree. I mean, you can safely say it. You have Josh Hill, and that's about it. You need to have bodies in there, and unfortunately, we don't have access to the best tight ends because we don't have a first round pick. Like a guy like Irv Smith Jr., son of the former Saint, from Alabama, would be an ideal fit for us, but we're probably not going to get a shot at him unless I don't even think about what it would take to trade up to get a guy like that. But, I never put anything past Loomis and Peyton. If they see a guy they want, they're going to try and get him. Yeah, you're picking at the bottom half of the second round. You're picking it at the what is it, 30th position, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So in the second round, so you're talking almost 2 whole rounds going before you even get your first pick. So it's tough to fill that position in the draft. So you have to look at free agency. Well, I posted this meme before, this little video clip before. Remember in Batman, the original movie from 1989 with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson as the Joker, and he's meeting with Vicky Vale in the art museum, and he takes a portfolio and he's just going, crap, 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 crap. That's exactly my attitude when it comes to the tight ends in free agency. I mean, you got a 30-year-old Jared Cook who had a career year with the worst team in the NFL, the Oakland Raiders. You got Jesse James, who's best known for his drop pass, although I kind of give it to him that really wasn't a drop pass for the Steelers against the Patriots. And after that, it's just a bunch of whatever, So
I got one name for you.
Mm-hmm.
This is more headed towards the draft. A player that I've looked at that probably could do well in our system, Foster Moreau from LSU.
I heard a lot about him. He wore the famous number 18 jersey, which says a lot about him at LSU. Of course, LSU runs an offensive scheme straight out of the Stone Age. So how well he was utilized in LSU's offensive scheme, that has to be taken into consideration. You probably could get a Foster Moreau. I don't know how I want to take him at the end of the second round, though. He's ideally, in my opinion, he's more ideally a third-round pick, but we don't have a third-round pick.
But we will get that back as soon as Bridgewater leaves, though, correct?
Well, you don't get that until 2020 if you do get it back. You don't get it this year. You have to wait a whole year. Yeah,
that sucks.
Yep. Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah, because it's based entirely on you have to sign fewer players than you lose, and the players you lose have to be rated higher than the players you sign. That's how the compensatory picks work. So you would get a third-round pick in 20. If we lose Bridgewater and don't sign, we don't sign Antonio Brown. We don't sign a major player, in free agency like a Ndamukong Suh or, those kind of guys. We can get that pick back, but they have to rate your moves for you to get it. And that's why teams like the Patriots and the Packers always get a ton of players, because they don't sign a whole lot of free agents. And they're more than willing to let players go, especially the Patriots. They don't pay anybody, except massage girls, but that's beside the point. Did I say that out loud? I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that.
6 Super Bowl rings and 1 prostitution ring.
Hey, man, look, all I'm hoping for is a happy ending for, Mr. Kraft after all this is over with. I think that's how you got busted in the first place.
Yeah. Okay, moving right along.
Yeah.
What would you say would be the number 2 position of need?
Defensive tackle. Sean Payton talked about that. Defensive tackle. They need to have, because you've got Sheldon Rankins, and thanks to Nick Underhill, who came out and said that Sheldon Rankins' injury, unlike Okafor's, Okafor was pretty much back to football shape in about 8 months after his injury. Rankins, because it was in January, 8 months was going to put him in the middle of training camp. And they're saying now it's probably closer to 10 months. So that puts him October instead of early, mid-September, which is kind of what I thought he'd be back by. We're probably looking at near the end of October. He won't be out for the whole year, but with him being out, Tyler Davidson, a free agent, Onyemata, we talked about this a few weeks ago, got busted. It was a misdemeanor because it's now a misdemeanor law crime in Louisiana. Misdemeanor bust for possession of marijuana. He may or may not get suspended. I personally don't believe he will get suspended because I think it's a first-time violation. I think he is now on their chart. They're going to start randomly testing him. You can ask Eric Reed about being randomly tested, but they will start testing him more often. So if he flunks any test from now on, he'll look at a 4-game suspension just like Mark Ingram. Because it doesn't go to a 4-game suspension right off the bat. It's not how it works. You get a first-timer offense. I don't think Onyemata's ever had anything happen to him. If he did, then we're looking at a 4-game suspension. But I don't think that's going to be the case. Regardless, because all you have now is Stallworth at your defensive tackle and a couple of guys that we've had in training camp and things like that. You really need somebody in there for that rotation. You really need somebody in there as a starter, rotating guy once Rankins is coming back into form, and the cover for Onyemata if he's suspended. So, yeah, defensive tackle is important. How about you?
Cornerback.
Now, why cornerback? I'm curious about this. P.J. Williams is a free agent. That's a given. You have.
I hope P.J. Williams is unemployed, actually, but that's a different story.
And then you have P-Rob, who is coming off of injury. You traded for Eli Apple, which is why you don't have a 4th-round pick. You've got Lattimore, and you have Justin Hardy. So why do you have cornerback up so high? Just let you go on.
Because we need – Eli Apple came through, and he struggled at the beginning, which you basically – you really should attribute that to having to transition from one team to another. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there. But beyond those two, the quality of play at cornerback goes down drastically. And as you said, you've got an older P-Rob coming back from injury. You don't know what you're going to get there. You saw what you got with Idiot. He was hit or miss. He would either make a sensational, spectacular play or he'd give up a touchdown. And it disturbs me greatly that my name was on the back of that jersey. Anyway, I just think that most of the time that the Saints were struggling on defense was because of the poor play at cornerback. You had solid production out of the defensive front. Your linebacker core was spot on with Demario Davis. Safeties, yeah, well, okay. They didn't suck. But now play at cornerback struggled mightily at times. And you're looking at the very real possibility of having one of the top defenses in the league at this point, especially if some of these younger players step in and step up. But if you have at every level, if you have solid production, but you struggle at cornerback, you are really, really exploitable.
Well, that was the dirty little secret about the Dome Patrol defense is the secondary was not very good, especially at corner. I mean, you had Toy Cook and Reggie Sutton, Dave Waymer, Reginald Jones. They kind of went through a list of Milton Mack. They kind of went through a slew of defensive backs back there. And if you look at the inglorious history of the Saints defensive backfield, a guy from the expansion team Dave Witzel is still one of the top cornerbacks in Saints franchise history, mainly because of the 10 interceptions he got that year. But still, he is still considered one of the top 10 cornerbacks, and we're looking at a 52-year-old franchise. So, you can never have enough good corners. And I felt Lattimore last year had a down year. It took him a long time to get around back into not shutdown corner, but good, solid defensive back play shape. So I can see the need for a cornerback. You don't know what you can get with P-Rob. And once again, you're only a couple of injuries away from fielding a B.W. Webb and what was the guy we kept bringing back every so often?
Golly,
I'm drawing a blank on him right now, but
I am too.
He's that cornerback we must have brought back and got rid of about 100 times, and just a very average cornerback, but he was a body.
Yeah.
And it'll come to me. He was ex-Tampa, right? Anyway, yeah, we were lucky. Apple and Lattimore took every snap last year, except for the Redskins game. I took it back. Lattimore just does not like playing the Washington Redskins for some reason. He always gets hurt in the first couple plays of the game. But yeah.
Well, if you look at his rookie season as up next to the season that he had a year ago, he struggled.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was very disappointing.
Of course, there's a lot of weight that goes along with being the NFC Defensive Rookie of the Year. People are gonna put you to the test, and I don't know how much that played into it, but
I think he bought his hype. I think he bought his own hype. Honestly,
that was what I was politely not trying to say, but I do too.
You were not wrong. I think he bought his own hype and played like it. His whole. We enjoyed it last year because he was doing it, where he was bragging about shutting down this receiver and shutting down that receiver. Well, he didn't do it this year. They went right at him. And they tested him often, and he failed often. So he and Marcus Williams are the two players I was most disappointed with this past season. They should not have played as well as poorly as they played last year, but they did. Especially Marcus Williams. The whole revenge tour, the whole I'm working on every day. I'm making myself better and better because I want to get past that play, and I thought a lot of times he was out of position. Who I did think played well and got better as the season went on was Von Bell. I thought he got a lot better as the season went on. That's why I was so disappointed in Marcus Williams. You need a guy. First off, we need a cornerback that shuts down one side of the field, at least does that. If not, forces turnovers. But you need a secondary. You need a safety. I mean, who is going to force turnovers? And we're not getting that.
Yeah,
we talk about it all the time, but the difference every time I'm gonna keep harping on this. The difference between 2009 and 2011. 2013 and 2018 now is the turnovers. You've got to get those turnovers, especially in big games. You've got to force turnovers. You force turnovers, you're stealing possessions. You're giving the offense more opportunities to put more points on the board. That's what you have to do as a defense. And Marcus Williams, like it or not, you've got the bullseye on there because that guy who shall not be mentioned, number 42 from the 2009 team, set that mark way up there. of the kind of play we're expecting out of safeties. You've got to come at least halfway there, and you're not doing that yet. That's what I need out of Marcus Williams. So
exactly.
And that kind of leads to, and then one of my needs, I think we need a safety. I think we need a veteran safety because Coleman, that was a disaster.
An expensive one.
Yeah, it was an expensive one, but you really need to get a veteran safety back there. And Matthew told me right before we went on the air, the Ravens might cut Eric Weddle.
They did cut him.
I tell you what,
they cut him this afternoon.
I'm running to the phone to call Eric Weddle's agent because that's the veteran safety you need back there. Now, granted, he's more of a Von Bell kind of safety than he is a Marcus Williams, but that's the guy who could be a coach in the field for you. That's the kind of guy you want on this team. I'd love to have Eric Weddle on this team.
What about Matthew?
I'd take Eric Weddle 100 times over the Honey Badger any day of the week. The Honey Badger is a safety corner hybrid. He's kind of a zone kind of corner. He likes to roam around and make plays that way. He's not going to be a hitter. He's not a guy that you can just stick back there in the deep middle. You know, you got to let him roam and make plays on his own. And I just don't think that works in our defense. I really don't. I think Eric Weddle is for what they want in that defense. I mean, because I know fans want to just bench Williams and they just want to bench or cut Von Bell. That's just the attitude people have. I like those two guys. I think there's a lot of potential there. You need a guy to act as a coach and get those guys to be more aggressive, especially Williams. Be more aggressive on that ball. Attack that football. Don't wait for the ball to come to you. Go get it. So that's why I like Weddle in that situation.
Okay. What's your number 3?
Well, I would say wide receiver, but the Saints don't sign wide receiver free agents. They really don't. I mean, you've got Ted Ginn Jr. and you have David Patton. Those are the only two really named wide receiver free agents the Saints have signed since Sean Payton's been here. So they really don't go after those guys. They like to get their own players and put them through the system and have Coach CJ train these guys to become receivers. And so they like to spend time with Keith Kirkwood and players like that and try and build them up. But I just think at this point of Drew Brees' career, given what was going on at those last 4 or 5 games of the season and the playoffs, you really need to get somebody, a true speed threat, opposite Michael Thomas, a young guy with some size and some speed who can take the top off of a defense and put the fear of God of the big play in there. Because I've already said your tight end class is pretty weak and you're not in a good position to draft a really good tight end. So I think if you upgrade your receiving core and get an adequate tight end, that probably will balance themselves out because you could survive with a Josh Hill kind of tight end catching the occasional passes. You can't survive with a Keith Kirkwood or those type of receivers with Michael Thomas and a Josh Hill kind of tight end. We have more talent, I think, in the receiving core or receiving free agent class than you do in the tight end free agent class. So I would spend more money on getting the receiver in. Let Ted Ginn go. Bring in a speed guy. Probably bring in a slot guy to challenge both Traquan Smith and number 81, the guy
Meredith.
Cameron Meredith. Challenge those guys, make those guys step up their play, and see where you go from there. Worst case scenario, you got two more guys. You now have 5 receivers who are very capable. Let the Tommy Lee Lewises and the Keith Kirkwoods and those kind of guys kind of go off to the side because you really want to upgrade that receiving core. So that would be my number 3 is you need to upgrade that receiving core. And I don't think you can do it in draft. I think you need to do it in free agency.
Well, my number 3, and I'm going to get feedback on this, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Quarterback.
Well,
Drew Brees is 40 years old.
Yes, he is.
He has 1 more year under contract. And chances are better than not, as you and I have discussed at great length on here before. Had the Saints gone to the Super Bowl and won it, Drew Brees would now be retired.
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe that. If this team does not start preparing for life after Brees, and I'm not talking about a certain number 7. That is not life after Brees. That's a neat little gadget, a neat little toy to play with, but that's not going to get you where you're wanting to go.
Well, that brings up 2 interesting conversations I've been having with Avery, both in private messages and on boards. So you've got Teddy Bridgewater, who's a free agent. Do you go ahead and try and sign him as the heir apparent, or, and this is a big if because we haven't really heard anything official yet, but the Arizona Cardinals are talking about basically going Mike Ditka and going after, announcing to the world that they're going to go after Kyler Murray, and they just drafted Josh Rosen. Jeff. Josh Rosen last year, already putting him on the trading block, and I saw a 3rd-round pick they're talking about getting for him, which would be stealing, in my opinion, because regardless of what you think about Rosen as a person, because he does have questionable leadership skills, you're talking about a guy who went in the top 10 overall just last year, and you're willing to take a 3rd-round pick for him. We got a 1st-round pick for Cooks. I don't know if that screams that he's a bust or what, but, that's your other option out there. If you don't sign Bridgewater, do you go after Rosen instead as your heir apparent? Or do you just say, we're going to ride with Hill as the backup and take our chances in the 2020 draft and draft a quarterback in the 1st round there in all those scenarios?
Well, like I said, if we don't start preparing for life after Drew, it's going to be ugly. We've said it on here a million times. This is a quarterback-driven league. You cannot win without a solid quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And could Bridgewater be the man? I don't think so. But
I don't either.
Taysom Hill, to be honest with you, in the playoffs, had Drew Brees gone down, it would have been Taysom Hill playing quarterback, not Teddy Bridgewater.
But I don't know. I think they would have put Bridgewater in there. I don't know if they would have rode with that. That's why you brought in Bridgewater, was in case a Philadelphia Eagles, Nick Foles, and Carson Wentz scenario happened. That's why you brought him in. But I don't think we would have done any better with. I think we would definitely have lost with either of those guys in. That's just. I'm not impressed with Bridgewater at all. I never have been. Going back to the draft, I didn't think much of Bridgewater coming into the draft. And this is something. This is going to be a little of a rant, and I don't want it to come across that way, but no, I'm serious. And this goes back to what we were just talking about to start the show about, the combine. The media today, because of social media, because of 24/7 coverage, because of the NFL Network and ESPN and NFL Live and all these talking head shows, the media no longer reports the news, they shape the news. And I just have this, it bothers me. And it bothered me during the draft coverage last year. It was the first time I watched on NFL Network because I was tired of seeing it on ESPN. And it's really kind of getting to that point. And I'm going to refer back to the famous Mel Kiper. Who the hell was Mel Kiper blow up by Vince Tobin back in 1984? Because Mel Kiper believed that the Colts should have drafted Trent Dilfer because all they had as a quarterback was Jim Harbaugh in his final years. Now, granted, Jim Harbaugh took that Colts team to the AFC Championship game in 1995 and was a dropped Hail Mary pass away from going to Super Bowl 30. Okay? But that blow up between Vince Tobin and Mel Kiper Jr. was basically about why teams don't draft who the media thinks they should draft. And I felt that way when Bridgewater was coming through. I saw it in action with Geno Smith going to the Jets. I just felt like
Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson was another good example. But it's not just quarterbacks. It's these guys that bring into the green room, okay? And the infamous slide, Matt Leinart.
Brady Quinn.
Brady Quinn. Yeah, it's another one.
That was brutal to watch.
Yeah.
Because after every pick they made, the camera automatically goes to him and his reaction to not being drafted again.
Absolutely. And it's like you're running out of teams that are going to draft. Now, granted, you've got a guy like, Aaron Rodgers who slid mainly because he went once he got past a certain point. Now you go into teams that don't need quarterbacks. So you are going to slide all the way down. So you get to another team that's looking for a quarterback. But that story that was unfolding, you felt like, okay, you're supposed to take a guy now because we got him in the green room. That's why we invited him here. That's why they invite 20-something players now to the NFL draft. So you can get that shot of them holding the jersey up and do the fist bump and the chest bump and the hug of the commissioner and all the other stuff. So now the media kind of shapes and tells teams, these are the guys you're supposed to draft. These are the guys you're supposed to have on your team. And I'm seeing it more and more with these mock drafts and everything else. 25 years ago, when I first started watching the draft back in 1988, I didn't know who the Saints were supposed to draft until I saw Peter Finney's mock draft in the Times-Picayune the day of the draft. They had some draft profiles in the Times-Picayune, and they talked about some needs of the Saints, but you really did hear a lot about who the Saints were supposed to draft. Now it's like a mantra. They just drive this thing on fans. And guys, and because they look great in shorts and T-shirts, they start rising up the board, and the media starts going, is he the next, DK Metcalf? Is he the next Megatron? Is he next Julio Jones? And they ignore their college resume. how good of a player they were in college. We don't hear them more. It's just this hype machine that gets going. So that's how I feel. I've always felt about Bridgewater. I felt that he was a product, a good bit by a hype machine that kind of pumped him up to a first-round draft pick when he was really more like the talent level of a third-round draft pick, which is what the Saints ended up paying for when they got him. But I just see this, and I see it right now with Kyler Murray. The same thing. And it drives me crazy. It really does. It turns me off to football because I don't like the hype. Just go straight based on what they did in college. How good of a player they were in college against elite competition, and leave it at that. It's no sin to go in the third round. Joe Montana went in the third round. Tom Brady went in the sixth round. There's no Damian Harrison went undrafted. No, he went in sixth. Kurt Warner went undrafted. There's no sin in being a late round draft pick. You don't have to hype guys up. They're going to be busts no matter what. Stop hyping these players and focus them purely on what kind of football player they are. Sorry. Like I said, it was going to be a rant. But, I mean, it's just that in the Bridgewater thing, when he was coming through, it's why I didn't like him, because I felt like he was more hyped than how good of a player he really was.
Well, I think stapled to Bridgewater's resume now in terms of keeping him in New Orleans is going to be that game 16, that week 17 game against Carolina that he had, where he was less than impressive, if I could put it politely. And
I thought he looked a lot like what we saw in Minnesota. Granted, didn't have a complete offensive line in front of him. I get that. They were running kind of a vanilla offense. I get that. But I just did not see. I saw a lot of what I saw in Minnesota. He is a guy that's going to need a great defense. He is a guy that's going to need a powerful running game, a great offensive line where he can have these long, methodical drives where he can just dink and dunk you to death. It's a very I don't want to call it a Carl Smith offense because that's not accurate, but it's a very conservative, methodical offense that he has to run. And it's not a vertical, it's not an attacking offense. And I just don't see him that kind of quarterback. I'd rather look for a quarterback who is much more of a Baker Mayfield. I'm going to go get it. I'm pushing that ball down the field. We're going to score. We're driving this thing down the field. That's what I want to see. I want to see an aggressive, attacking offense. And I don't see that with Bridgewater. That's just my opinion.
And I agree with you. 100%. Like I said, we are living in the final days of Drew Brees' career. I do believe that the whole playing until he's 45, I can't see it happening. Whether that be from a physical standpoint or purely his desire to continue to play. I just don't see it.
I think he loves his family too much. And, that's going to sound like a cheap cop-out, but his kids, hey, I've been there. They're getting to that fun age. And that's not to say that kids aren't always fun. But I've always told people that between 5 and 10, those are the years that my kids were the most fun to be around. They're still fun to be around today. But I'm talking about as far as I took them to Disney World during that time period. And the first time we went, it was the magic of Disney, hit them. Everything was a new experience. You go to a water park. First time I've been to a water park with a huge water slide, the excitement they have just going there, going on a family vacation anyway. We drove to Pennsylvania. My brother lived up there. We took a long way, so we went through the Appalachian Mountains, and just their faces when they saw the mountains. Then we went to Colorado, and then we went up Mount Evans, and they got to break off icicles, eat icicles, and throw snow and that kind of stuff. And that just, that joy of experiencing things for the first time. That's the kind, and then the sports stuff they did, and the swimming and the dancing and all that stuff. It was all first time stuff. So it's just a lot of fun. When they become 11, 12, 13, suddenly now you're an idiot. Although I shouldn't say that, but I mean, they get moody. The eye rolls start, and they're trying to find their own way. So Drew Brees' kids are about that age, in that 5 to 10 range now. And, he likes being around them. He likes doing things with them, and he coaches their flag football team. So I think that's what's going to drive him into retirement. Just wanting to be around his kids at that age, not having them grow up. And then when he retires, they're already teenagers and doing their own thing. And he's the cats in the cradle dad. Yeah. I mean, he doesn't want to be the cats in the cradle dad. He wants to be that fun dad. So,
well, we want to thank everybody for joining to my other job.
Yeah, I kind of rambled on and took away some of your thunder there. I'm sorry about that.
No. As always, I enjoy listening to you and hearing you explain yourself. You're one of the smartest, most intelligent people that I know.
My God, you don't know a whole lot of people, do you?
Well, that is what I was about to say. I don't know.
There you go.
But we want to thank you guys for joining us tonight on Under the Dome. As always, we love you. And me personally, I've missed you guys. And I want to thank everybody that took the time to check on me and to send me a message. Hey, missed you guys. I'll be glad to see the show again this week. I hope everything's okay. And that really means a lot. As usual, we want to thank Fan First Productions for sponsoring this. Invite you guys once again to subscribe to our show on iTunes and on YouTube. Find us on Facebook at Under the Dome Podcast. All of you guys that like music, shameless self-promotion here. You can go to 3 words, Coon Ass Carnival. That's the name of the band that I play in. If you ever get a chance to come out and catch the show, it is absolutely something that you'll never forget. I play with 2 of the most talented guys that I could have come across, and loving what we do.
You need to put your video on Under the Dome.
Yeah,
we need to hear you sing "Knock on Heaven's Door."
Well, I'm gonna get one where there's not a drunk behind the film crew singing off key.
We just need the drunk on the microphone singing off key, playing the bass. I got you.
All right. Well, I love you guys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Alan, it's all yours, brother.
Thank y'all for joining us again tonight. Hope y'all had a good and safe Mardi Gras. Thank God the weather kind of cooperated, but March Mardi Gras is supposed to be in the 60s and 70s, not the 30s and the 40s. But given Louisiana is like we started the show with, it'll be in the 80s again by this weekend. Just for the love of God, stop raining, please. But we'll talk some more about the draft. We'll probably do the defensive breakdown. Bob and I did the offensive breakdown last week or 2 weeks ago. We'll probably do defensive breakdown next week. And that and a whole lot more. We'll see you next time Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.